Have you ever wished you could drift off to a world where small acts of kindness ripple through a sleepy village? Tonight, let me take you to Fair Haven Crossing, a place where moss-dappled roofs and garden plots brimming with late-season vegetables whisper stories of quiet heroism. A crumpled letter from Edith Moon Whisper holds the key. Time you learned what it means to be useful, dear one. What begins as a simple cat rescue unfolds into a tale of community, courage, and the gentle magic of being needed. Close your eyes and let the story carry you. Imagine stepping into Fair Haven Crossing, where every stone and beam holds the warmth of years. The village settles at the cross of two trade roads, its honey-colored stones worn smooth by passing carts and boots. Timber houses lean gently against each other, their pitched roofs fuzzy with moss where the sun lingers. Clothes ripple on lines between cottages, and garden patches spill tangled vines and gnarled carrots toward the lanes. A wooden sign by the roadside tells the truth plainly. Fair Haven Crossing, founded 847, population 312, visitors welcome. Someone has carved below in uneven letters, mostly peaceful. The words catch your eye with their quiet honesty. Towns like this hold secrets in their seams, small troubles needing hands, hidden stories tucked behind curtained windows. Laundry flaps in the breeze, smelling of lye soap and summer herbs drying on racks. The last fat tomatoes cling to crooked stakes in garden plots, their leaves curled brown at the edges. Beetroots bulge from the soil near a woman pinning up her skirts as she kneels to pick stubborn onions. You hear the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the patient cluck of hens scratching near a cottage stoop. Studies show our minds relax when we picture such places, the steadiness of daily rhythms, the way light finds every worn step and cobblestone. There's safety in these streets, where each vegetable patch and slack clothesline whispers that people belong here, have belonged here for centuries. But look closer. Under the peace, the village hums with quiet work. A man in a flour-dusted apron motions to someone carrying firewood. Two children dart past, their arms full of bundled herbs for some kitchen. By the tavern door, a farmer rubs his bearded chin, watching the road with tired eyes. Fair Haven Crossing isn't perfect, only real. A cart bumps along the main lane, jars clinking under a cloth. Chickens scatter and resettle. Someone upstairs shakes a rug from a window, sending motes swirling in the sun. These ordinary motions hold the village together, the way hands pass bread at market, the way neighbors nod across fences. It's the sort of place where small kindnesses weave into something lasting. Notice the stone well near the square, its bucket swaying on rusty chains. A woman laughs as she hauls up water, sunlight catching the drops that splash her shawl. Across the way, the tavern sign creaks, a sturdy bramble bush carved and painted green. Inside, voices murmur like a brook over stones, warm and blurred by thick walls. This is where stories begin unseen, where a grandmother's letter folds into a pocket, where a blacksmith's boy hums while sweeping the step, where a worried woman glances too often toward the old well. The village doesn't need saving, only tending. The kind of place where a traveler could stop for a meal and stay long enough to matter. Beneath closed shutters, loaves rise in clay ovens. Behind the chandler's shop, bees drone in their tidy boxes. Even the quiet holds purpose, the pause before a door lifts its latch, the breath before a child confesses broken pottery. In Fair Haven Crossing, no one is too small to help. Now the breeze shifts, bringing wood smoke and the river's damp edge. Leaves skitter across the road as the sunlight slants longer. Somewhere a goat bleats, and an old man chuckles as he ties up his beans for the last time this season. The day is settling, like a hen fluffing into straw. Watch the blacksmith wipe his brow and turn back to the glowing forge. See the miller's daughter lugging 2 brimming pails toward the baker's, spilling not a drop as she sidesteps chickens. Each movement fits. Each person leans into their piece of the day's balance. The village breathes in, breathes out. Travelers sometimes pause here longer than they plan. The bread tastes like home, they say. The beds lie easy on weary backs. But it's the way the butcher throws scraps to the butcher's boy's scruffy dog. The way the weaver waves off thanks for mending a torn hem. That's what makes strangers stay. Every morning, brooms whisk steps clear. Every evening, lanterns bloom golden in windows. Between them, hands plant and mend and stir and build. None of it grand, all of it needed. Such places exist in the world, if you know where to look. So let's look closer at the crumpled letter in your pocket, the one with Edith's strong, sloping script. Her words wait like seeds in good earth. Time you learned what it means to be useful, dear one. Fair Haven Crossing spreads before you, steady, patient, alive, with small necessities. Somewhere a cat yowls down a well. Somewhere a grandmother smiles to herself, knowing her words have found their mark. The letter feels heavy in your hands, its soft creases worn from travel. Edith Moon whispers handwriting slopes like wind-bent grass, the ink faint where raindrops caught it. She writes, "Time you learned what it means to be useful, dear one." The words land gently, the way twilight settles over fields. No grand quests or destiny here, just the quiet truth that helping hands build steadier than heroes' boasts. Your pack leans against your knees, straps digging even through thick wool. Dust cakes your boots from roads walked alone. Edith knows this. Pack light, she advises. Think quick. Her letters always carry practical magic, lessons folded between reminders to darn socks and check for ticks. Scientists note small, clear tasks ease anxious minds, giving restless thoughts a place to settle. The village notice board looms ahead, its postings fluttering like trapped moths. Your stomach growls. Martyr Sweetbread's voice rings out before you see her, flour dusting her apron like fresh snow. "You've got to eat," she says, pressing a bun warm as sun-baked stone into your palm. The kindness makes your throat tight. She nods toward the Briar Tavern. Tell Gareth I sent you. Edith's letter continues beneath your fingers. Someday you'll be the hero you'd always dreamed of being. Not today, though. Today has blisters and wondering where to wash your spare shirt. Today means reading each notice twice. Henrik needs fence repairs. The miller's daughter seeks a calculus tutor. The blacksmith wants someone to mind the forge while she tends her sick mother. Small things, the kind that weave a person into the fabric of a place. A boy darts past, nearly toppling your pack. His laughter scatters like chicken feed. Around the square, people move with purpose, the fishmonger icing his catch, a potter loading kiln shelves, girls skipping rope to a counting rhyme. No one glances twice at you. Strangers come and go here. It's a comfort, this anonymity, like being a stone in a creek, watching the waters work without having to explain your edges. Edith's last line sits apart from the rest, floating at the bottom of the page. Start small. Simple words, but they untangle the knot between your shoulders. Studies show breaking tasks into pieces no bigger than your hand can ease the mind's whirl. You don't need to solve the bandit warnings or mend every fence. Just find the next right thing. The tavern door swings open, releasing the smell of stew and ale. Inside, farmers argue over barley prices, while a woman tunes her lute by the fire. Your boots scuff sawdust strewn to soak up spills. Each step feels lighter now. The letter tucks safe in your pocket, its wisdom humming against your thigh. Gareth stands behind the bar, polishing a tankard with a ragged cloth. His beard holds streaks of rye gold, not yet surrendered to gray. When you give Martyr's name, he slides a bowl toward you without asking for coin. New faces eat free first night, he says. The stew's heat seeps into your palms. Acceptance often comes like this here, no fuss, just an extra chair at the table. Outside, the notice board's parchments whisper in the breeze. Some jobs pay in coin, others in bread or mended boots. One scrap stands out, Leah Thornfield's cat stuck down the well behind Miller's Lane. No reward listed, just a smudged plea. You trace the letters with a flour-dusted finger. Small enough. Edith's voice seems to rustle the paper. Usefulness isn't about scale. Village life turns on these tiny actions, the shared axe, the watched baby, the pot left bubbling on a grieving neighbor's step. Psychologists find such microconnections soothe the nervous system as reliably as chamomile tea. The tavern noise wraps around you, clinking spoons, Gareth's chuckle, the lute's first experimental chords. Your spoon scrapes the bowl's bottom. Tomorrow will come with splinters from the well rope and likely a drenched sleeve. But tonight, the fire's glow paints the ceiling beams gold, and for once, your breath matches the slow rise and fall of the sleeping dog by the hearth. Night settles over Fair Haven Crossing. Crickets take up their song beyond the windows. Somewhere, a baby fusses and is calmed. The letter's weight in your pocket feels less like obligation now, more like a hand resting briefly on your shoulder. You'll meet the notice board's tasks one by one, learning the village's rhythms as your boots learn its paths. Edith would approve, not of grand deeds, but of the way you listen when Henrik explains which fence posts rot first, how you carefully fold Leia's note into your pocket instead of crumpling it, the patience in your hands as you oil the well pulley before attempting the rescue. These are the real currencies here: attention, care, showing up. The lute player begins a tune about a tailor's lost thimble. Farmers join the chorus, their voices rough as tree bark. You hum along, not knowing the words yet, but feeling their shape. The fire pops, sending up a shower of sparks. Somewhere beyond these walls, Whiskers the cat waits in the well's damp dark. Tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Gareth pours you weak cider and asks nothing more than that you sit a while. The quiet heroism of being present. Sleep will come easier here, with the scent of hay from the loft above and the murmur of voices below. No need to plan the week or even the morning. Just the cat, the rope, the gratitude in Leia's eyes when you hand her a soggy but unharmed bundle of fur. A first stitch in the tapestry of belonging. The candle at your table gutters. Upstairs, floorboards creak as the innkeeper makes his final rounds. You trace Edith's signature one last time before tucking the letter away. Outside, the moon silvers the notice board's postings. So many needs, so many chances to whisper, "I can help with that." Small offerings, each one a seed. With guidance in hand, you step into the heart of Fair Haven Crossing. The Briar's door swung open with the groan of hinges that had announced strangers for decades. Warm air rushed out, thick with the scent of stewed lamb and hearth-baked bread. Gareth stood behind the bar, a linen rag tucked into his belt as he polished a pewter tankard. His glance took in the travelers' mud-caked boots and the way their fingers hesitated on the doorframe. "Martyr's mark on you," he said before the traveler could speak. He slid a wooden plate across the bar, thick slices of brown bread, a wedge of yellow cheese, a steaming bowl of something rich and herb-scented. First meal on the house for new faces. His knuckles were scarred from ancient brawls, but his palms lay open on the counter. Studies show small acts of generosity activate the brain's safety signals, lowering stress chemicals before a word is spoken. The tavern hummed like a beehive at sundown. Farmers hunched over dice games near the fire, their calloused hands cupping mugs. Two weavers shared a corner table, heads bent over a bolt of cloth unfurled between trenchers. By the window, a man with straw stuck in his jerkin stabbed his knife toward a map. They hit the south field again. He told no one in particular. The barkeep's eyes flicked toward him Henrik, whose barley stood ready for harvest in vulnerable strips near the woods. Gareth poured dark ale without being asked. "Drink that slow," he advised, tapping his temple. Village gossip hits harder than the brew. He nodded toward a trio of women by the butter churn, discussing someone's daughter's rash marriage. An old codger mending nets by the hearth chimed in with details they'd missed. Research confirms social bonds form fastest in shared spaces where people feel free to grumble and grin. The stew burned the traveler's tongue, but it was the best thing they'd tasted in weeks. Carrots dissolved on their tongue, sweet as if pulled from the earth that morning. A chunk of turnip lingered in the broth, carrying the memory of wood smoke from whatever cauldron it had simmered in. Gareth refilled their water jug without asking, the ceramic cool against their travel-worn palms. "Words out your Edith's kin," the tavern keeper murmured while scrubbing a stain from the counter. He kept his voice low enough that Henrik's complaints about missing livestock wouldn't overlap. "Means you'll get fair chances here. But mind, promises made in this room stick like honey to wool." From the ceiling beams hung bunches of drying thyme someone had tied with red string, part charm against thieves, part reminder that nothing stayed secret long where so many tongues wagged. A girl no taller than the barstool slid a wooden bowl toward the traveler. "Ma says try the blackberries," she whispered before bolting back to the kitchen. The fruits burst between the traveler's teeth, warm from sitting near the oven. Scientists note how sharing food triggers ancient neural pathways tied to trust, a leftover from when breaking bread meant survival. Henrik's fist hit the table. 2 more nights till harvest. His map showed crude circles where bandits had struck here, a plundered smokehouse, there a trampled melon patch. The men beside him nodded, their faces tight. One spun his wedding ring round and round his finger. Gareth caught the traveler watching. "Trouble shared is trouble halved," he said, clearing the empty bowl. "But folks here don't take kindly to blowhards who won't swing a scythe when it's time." His tone made it clear which category the shouting farmer fell into. The traveler understood then this welcome wasn't free. Meals earned in the briar were paid back in labor, in loyalty, in showing up when the cider press needed turning. By the back wall, a blacksmith's apprentice taught a shepherd's boy to play fox and geese on a scratched board. Their laughter cut through Henrik's grumbles. An old woman at the next table sorted a pile of buttons, testing each thread before adding it to her growing chain. Every person seemed to hold 2 conversations at once, the one with their companions, and the silent one with the room itself, listening for what they needed to know. Gareth refilled Henrik's mug without being asked. The farmer drank deep, his next words quieter. "Might need extra hands come morning," he admitted to the table at large. The men exchanged glances, weighing who owed favors, who had sons old enough to stand guard. The traveler's fingers found the notice board slip in their pocket, Leah Thornfield's plea about her missing cat. Simple work, unglamorous. Exactly the sort Edith had advised. The bandit talk could wait. "Done?" Gareth asked, already reaching for the empty plate. He jerked his chin toward the hall, where a dozen notes curled from the community board. "Martyr's rolls go stale by noon tomorrow, but she pays in coin, not promises." A hint, not an order. The tavern keeper's way to point toward opportunities without pushing a soul down any particular path. Outside, the last light gilded the rooftops. Children chased fireflies across the square, their bare feet kicking up dust that hung glowing in the air. Somewhere beyond the village, wolves howled, a sound that would have sent the traveler reaching for their sword a week ago. Now, it seemed merely part of the evening's song, no more threatening than the creak of Gareth's sign in the wind. They stepped toward the notice board, its parchment edges fluttering like moth wings. Each scrap represented a chance to be useful, to earn their place in this village's nightly breathing in and breathing out. Simple work, well done, would buy them another meal at the Briar, another glance of approval from Gareth's knowing eyes. Science confirms that straightforward tasks with clear outcomes, mending a fence, finding a lost pet, calm the mind far better than wrestling with unsolvable worries. The traveler scanned the board again. Leia's note mentioned an old well behind Miller's Lane, its stones slick with moss. A small thing rescuing a cat. But Edith's words echoed, no one builds trust with a single loaf. Start where you can reach. Gareth's laughter rumbled from inside as someone told a joke. The sound wrapped around the traveler like a blanket as they stepped toward the deepening twilight. Behind them, the tavern door creaked shut on a room full of people who might, in time, become neighbors if they proved willing to lift whatever needed lifting. With a full belly and a growing sense of place, the protagonist turns to the notice board. The notice board in Fairhaven Crossing hummed with voices even before dawn. The traveler approached as morning mist still clung to the grass, their fingers brushing curled parchment edges. Each note carried someone's small crisis. A broken cart axle needed mending. A herb garden required weeding. The schoolhouse roof leaked near the back row. Psychologists note how visualizing concrete tasks calms anxious minds, giving shape to abstract worries. Here, problems could be held between thumb and forefinger, measured in hours and handshakes rather than vague dread. Marcus's notice stood out not for its script, which was careless and smudged, but for the heavy wax seal at the bottom. Bandits near Pumpkin Grove, it warned. Meet at crossroads in 2 dawns. The traveler's pulse jumped, remembering Edith's advice about starting small. They traced the uneven letters, imagining heavy boots and drawn knives. Research shows breaking overwhelming challenges into steps, like preparing for a threat days in advance, reduces stress responses. The bandit problem would keep until tomorrow. Today demanded simpler work. Beside Marcus's warning, Leia Thornfield's plea fluttered in the breeze. Whiskers fell down the well behind Miller's Lane, it read. The ink blurred where droplets had hit the parchment, tears or morning dew. It was hard to say. We'll pay 2 silver bits for safe return. Below, someone had scribbled cat, been yowling since moonrise in looping charcoal. The traveler exhaled. Not every heroism required swords. Sometimes it took rope and steady hands. Further down the board, other needs waited. The midwife sought clean linens. The miller's son offered fishing lessons in trade for berry-picking help. Cognitive science suggests completing minor tasks first builds the confidence for larger challenges, like stacking small stones to reach a high branch. The traveler's fingers lingered over a torn slip, requesting anyone good with knots to repair the goose pen. simple, satisfying, the sort of work Edith meant when she wrote about usefulness. A shuffle in the grass announced company. The wheelwright's apprentice tugged at their sleeve. Old Toms use birthing twins, they panted. Need extra hands. Their eyes flicked toward the bandit notice, then away. Even children here understood unspoken choices between glory and grit, between protecting the whole village or just helping where you stood. The traveler hesitated. Being needed felt suddenly tangible, like warm bread pulled fresh from the oven. They nearly missed the smallest note pinned near the board's edge. Cornelius Grimald's tower needs ivy trimmed from east windows, it read. Will trade sleep remedies for labor. The paper smelled faintly of camphor, and something sharper wizard's ink, perhaps. The traveler recalled Edith mentioning Cornelius in her letter. Connections hummed like plucked strings between these scattered requests. Neuroscientists find that recognizing patterns in chaos soothes the mind, creating narrative from noise. Hendrik arrived as the traveler considered. He huffed at Marcus's notice. 2 days is too late for my squash, he muttered, jabbing a thumb at his own plea for help harvesting. Dirt crusted his nails, worry lined his forehead. The traveler watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed complaints. Here was need of a different sort, not bandits or birthings, but the slow creep of frost across unplucked vegetables. The kind of quiet emergency that starved villages inch by inch. A woman in a flour-dusted apron added another note while they stood there. Seamstress seeks delivery help carry linens to Bower Lane Cottage. She winked at the traveler. Good work for learning who bakes the best honey cakes along the way. The board was teaching them, the way Edith promised it would. Not just about tasks, but about the village's hidden map, who owed favors to whom, which doorsteps welcomed strangers, where a shared pot of tea might accompany payment. The bailiff's ledger sat open on a nearby bench, its pages filled with tallies of labor owed and repaid. 7 yards wool for barrel of cider, one entry read. 3 afternoons, sheep minding settles blacksmith debt. The traveler ran a finger down the columns. Here was Fair Haven's true ledger, not in coin, but in exchanges of time and trust. Behavioral studies show equitable trade systems lower community stress. Everyone sleeps better knowing debts won't crush them come spring. Marcus appeared as the sun cleared the roofline. He studied his own notice, then grunted at the traveler. You fight. When they shook their head, he smirked. Smart. Bandits don't care much for poetry. He peeled Leia's note from the board and pressed it into their hand. His palm was calloused, one knuckle split and healing. Start with what you can lift. A lesson wrapped in gravelly advice, maybe the first real wisdom they'd heard since Edith's letter. The well behind Miller's Lane wasn't far. The traveler could hear whiskers, plaintive cries before they saw the mossy stones. Leia knelt at the edge, lowering a bucket on fraying rope. Her skirts were soaked from kneeling in damp earth. She turned red-rimmed eyes upward, not hopeful yet, but willing to be. He's been down there since last night, she said. Her fingers trembled where they gripped the rope. Up close, the well smelled of wet stone and ancient water. The traveler peered over the edge. Far below, golden eyes gleamed in the darkness. A small, bedraggled face looked up, whiskers trembling. Problem-solving research suggests breaking challenges into stages. First assess, then gather tools, then act. The traveler exhaled. They had the assessment. Now for tools. Edith's advice whispered through their thoughts as they turned toward the path leading out of town. Cornelius owes me a favor, she'd written. Somewhere beyond the village, a wizard's tower waited. And so, the protagonist sets off to rescue a cat, unaware of the adventure that awaits. The guide's bare feet kicked up little puffs of dust as she led the way down Miller's Lane. She moved with the certainty of someone who knew every root and stone in the path. Every few steps, she glanced back to make sure the traveler still followed, her slate tucked under one arm like a precious book. The well came into view suddenly, a rough circle of mossy stones, half hidden by brambles. Its wooden cover had rotted at one edge, leaving a gap just wide enough for a determined cat. Dirt around the rim showed claw marks where Whiskers must have scrambled before falling. Neuroscientists note how focusing on small sensory details, the texture of stones, the slant of light through leaves, can ground a racing mind. A sound floated up from the darkness. Not a meow, but a thin, desperate noise no healthy cat should make. The guide grabbed the traveler's sleeve, her fingers trembling. She scrawled on her slate, "He sounds wrong." Below, she added, "2 days now," and underlined it twice before wiping the words away. The traveler peered over the edge. Afternoon light penetrated only a few feet before the well swallowed it whole. The faint shape of water glimmered far below. Between here and there lay only blackness and that terrible small cry. Studies on stress responses show that concrete problems with clear parameters retrieve cat from well cause less anxiety than vague worries do. Kneeling, the traveler called Whisker's name. A weak yowl answered, followed by the splash of something moving in the water. The well's stone sides offered no paw holds. Even-tied cloaks wouldn't reach deep enough. The travelers sat back on their heels, mind turning over possibilities, ropes, hooks, even climbing down themselves, each idea dissolving as impractical. The guide tugged insistently at their elbow. She pointed toward a thatched roof visible above the trees. "Thornfield," she scratched on her slate. When the traveler hesitated, she grabbed their hand and pulled. Research supports how small acts of service shift focus outward, away from self-doubt, and toward problem-solving that engages both mind and hands. Leah Thornfield stood in her garden plucking caterpillars from cabbage leaves when they arrived. Her dress showed smudges at the cuffs and hem, as though she'd been both baking and hauling firewood that morning. She dropped her basket when she saw the guide's face. "Not dead?" Leah asked the air between them. Relief and fear warred in her voice. Her fingers knotted in her apron pockets, while the guide scribbled frantic words. The traveler explained about the well, the rotted cover, the sounds from below. Leah listened without interrupting, her hands gradually stilling. When they finished, she said only, "Matthew will kill me if we lose another mouser," and walked into her cottage. Inside smelled of drying herbs and fresh bread. Leia rummaged in a chest while the traveler stood awkwardly near the door. The kitchen shelves held neat rows of preserves, the table scattered with half-mended tools. Evidence of a busy life pausing for no crisis. Here, Leia thrust a folded paper into the traveler's hands. The wax seal bore an elaborate G. Cornelius Grimald owes me for settling that business with his apprentice. Her voice dropped on the name, as though someone might be listening at the window. His tower stands northwest of the old quarry. There's a scroll there. It'll lift Whiskers without need of ropes. The traveler examined the seal. The G had been pressed deep into the wax, almost tearing through to the paper beneath. Studies suggest that clear next steps, however unusual, can override panic by providing an actionable path forward. Leia sensed their hesitation. "Grimald won't welcome visitors," she admitted. Then, softer, "But Edith Moon taught you, didn't she?" The traveler stiffened. "How?" "I knew her when she trained here." Leia turned a spoon handle against her palm. Her students always give themselves away that sideways look when considering a spell's edges. Go before nightfall. The tower's less watchful by day. The guide tugged at the traveler's belt pouch, holding up 2 fingers hopefully. Leia swatted her hand away. "No bribes, Sal. Run, tell Matthew where we've gone." Outside, the sun slanted mid-afternoon long. The traveler unfolded the note again, tracing Edith's brief addition at the bottom in familiar handwriting. "Take nothing else, touch nothing else, and we'll be out before the wizard knows we were here." The words carried her voice as clearly as if she'd spoken them aloud. The guide, Sal, scampered off through the bean poles. Leia watched her go with something between fondness and exhaustion. That child would bargain for air if she thought it'd earn her a copper. She straightened her apron and nodded toward the woods. "My sister's boy Jasper lurks somewhere near the tower most days. If anyone'll help you get inside, it's him." The path to the quarry branched off just beyond Thornfield's barley field. Leia stopped there, as if an unseen line lay between her and whatever waited ahead. "Grimald keeps wards," she said simply. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Whiskers is gray with white toes. Don't let the well trick you into pulling up some other creature." The traveler considered the tower's distant silhouette, dark stone against darker trees. Somewhere beneath their feet, Whiskers huddled in wet darkness. A psychologist might note how concrete missions get scroll. Save cat, allow the mind to bypass abstract fears through simple sequencing of tasks. Leia turned back toward home, calling over her shoulder, "Mind the willow on your left before the crypts." Its shadow lies even at midday. Alone now, the traveler adjusted their pack and stepped onto the northwest path. Routine actions, checking straps, counting water flasks, helped steady their hands. Ahead, the trees grew thick and quiet. Whiskers' cry still echoed in memory, but Edith's words held stronger. Start small, help where you're needed. Let the village learn your worth one practical deed at a time. A blackbird startled from the underbrush as they walked. Beyond the quarry's rim, the wizard's tower rose like a broken tooth against the sky. Somewhere up there lay the means to rescue a cat, and perhaps the next real step into Fair Haven's deeper stories. With Edith's direction, the protagonist seeks out the wizard's tower. The tower appeared at the end of the bramble path, just as dusk settled, an impossible column of dark stone, spiraling into the evening sky. Ivy clung to its sides, but no ordinary ivy. These leaves shimmered faintly blue when the wind shifted them. The traveler hesitated where cobbles began, their boot toe skimming the first smooth stone. A careful observer would notice these paving stones didn't quite match, as if scavenged from different places and times. Jasper found them there. The bard in training leaned against an apple tree, flipping a copper coin across his knuckles. His lute strap crossed his chest like a soldier's bandolier. You're the one who needs Grimald's help with the cat, he said, not a question. The fact that he knew confirmed what the traveler suspected. Village gossip moved faster than fire through dry grass. Edith's warning about Cornelius came back sharp and clear. He sleeps days and brews nights. Only take what we need, a scroll with the floating sigil, nothing more. Her description hadn't prepared them for the way the tower's shadow seemed to go on too long, or how goosebumps rose on their arms 5 paces from the door. Researchers find that facing challenges with allies reduces stress responses. Simply having Jasper there made the tower feel less impossibly strange. The door was oak banded with iron, worn smooth, where generations of hands had pushed. Jasper tested its edge with his coin, which came away flecked with something green that ate tiny pits into the metal. He whistled low and dropped it. Best not touch anything, like your grandma said. A narrow window slit stood just above head height. Jasper boosted the traveler enough to glimpse inside, shelves upon shelves of jars, their contents swimming in unnamed fluids. One held what looked like a pickled raven mid-flight. Another contained a miniature storm cloud that flickered with silent lightning. The traveler dropped back down, shaking their head. Right, we're not going in through the front, Jasper decided. He led them around the tower's base until they found what looked like a cellar door, half buried in the slope. Ivy had nearly swallowed its iron ring pull, but the wood beneath sagged with age and damp. Team dynamics studies show clear roles improve group success. Jasper naturally assumed reconnaissance, while the traveler focused on Edith's instructions. The bard produced wire picks from somewhere inside his vest. Got these from a locksmith in exchange for not singing outside her shop anymore, he explained as he worked. The lock clicked open after several tense minutes, revealing steps descending into blackness. A smell rose from below, wet stone, and something herbal, like crushed mint, overlaying something less pleasant. Jasper hesitated at the threshold. Tell you what, he murmured, I'll feel better with a tune. His fingers found the lute strings, plucking a quiet melody that seemed to push back the dark a few inches. Music therapy research confirms familiar rhythms can mitigate fear responses. The simple tune made the descent feel almost ordinary. Steps led down to a crypt, as they'd feared. 3 wraiths drifted between sarcophagi, their forms sketched in pale blue light around dark voids where faces might have been. Jasper's tune shifted to a lullaby, so soft it barely qualified as sound. The wraiths paused, their hollow gazes turning toward the music like flowers to weak winter sun. The traveler edged along the wall, Whisker's claw clutched tight in one hand. Edith's words circled in their mind. Nothing else. Touch nothing else. As they passed shelves stacked with items, both mundane and impossible. A teacup steaming despite being cold to the touch. A pair of gloves that twitched when no one watched. A book whose pages turned themselves at random. At last, they found the library. Scrolls filled cubbies stretching floor to ceiling, each labeled in spidery script. The floating sigil proved easy to spot. Its cubby glowed with a gentle amber light. The traveler reached for it just as Jasper sucked in a sharp breath behind them. He's moving upstairs, the bard whispered. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor directly overhead, accompanied by the tap-tap of what might have been a staff. Dust sifted down between ceiling boards. Researchers note how stress sharpens focus. Those tiny drifting particles suddenly seemed as noticeable as shouts. Jasper's lute never stopped. His melody grew even softer, but no less steady as the traveler carefully extracted the scroll. The parchment felt oddly warm, its edges flacking slightly where time had gnawed at it. Ancient ink symbols pulsed faintly, reacting to whoever held them. A new sound joined the footsteps, the creak of descending stairs. Jasper paled, but jerked his head toward a narrow window high on one wall. Out, now. His whisper barely stirred the air. The traveler hesitated. This felt too much like theft. But the thought of Whisker's plaintive mews from the well decided them. Jasper had to boost them again to reach the window. As they hauled themselves up, their boot dislodged a small vial from a nearby shelf. The bard caught it inches from the floor, his lute never missing a note. The footsteps above paused, then changed direction, coming faster now. Scroll clutched tight. The traveler squirmed through the window into cool night air. Jasper passed the lute out first, then scrambled after with alarming grace for someone who claimed to hate manual labor. They landed in damp grass as a sharp cry echoed from inside the tower, whether anger or surprise. Neither waited to find out. The scroll glowed faintly in the traveler's hand as they ran. Researchers confirm physical activity helps process stress hormones. Each pounding step away from the tower made breathing easier. Jasper snatched up his lute without breaking stride, plucking a victory tune now that their heist was done. Next time, he gasped between chords, Remind me to charge more for wizard jobs. His grin flashed in the moonlight. Behind them, no pursuer emerged from the tower. Yet, their luck wouldn't hold forever. The scroll's warmth spread through the travelers' fingers as they ran. Symbols pulsed brighter with each jolting step. Somewhere ahead, Whiskers still waited in his stony prison, unaware that help, bizarre and magical, though it was now raced back to him through the gathering dark. Crypt entrance lay hidden behind a curtain of willow branches, their leaves whispering against mossy stone. Jasper pushed them aside with the neck of his lute, revealing weather-worn steps descending into darkness. The air smelled of damp earth and something older, cold metal and extinguished candles. At the bottom, a rusted gate hung half open, its iron bars twisted as if something strong had forced its way out long ago. Jasper struck a single note on his lute, the sound echoing down the passage. Wizards always pick such cheerful locations, he muttered. The vibration revealed shallow steps carved directly into the bedrock, their edges worn smooth by centuries of use. Research suggests that familiar sounds in unfamiliar places can ground us. His music provided an anchor point in the deepening gloom. Deeper in, the corridor widened into a circular chamber. 3 sarcophagi stood upright against the walls, their stone surfaces etched with names time had erased. Then movement, pale figures drifting through solid stone like smoke through a sieve. Wraiths. Their eyes burned cold blue in the dark, fixed on the intruders. Jasper's fingers found the lute strings without looking. The first notes of the maiden's lament floated through the chamber, a traditional lullaby from the Northern Isles. Psychologists note how rhythm and melody can lower heart rate. His playing created an invisible shield of calm against the rising dread. The wraiths paused their advance, their hollow faces tilting, as if trying to remember the tune from some long-lost memory. The traveler's sword felt foolishly solid against these spectral foes. Still, they drew it, the scrape of steel against leather oddly loud. The nearest wraith hissed, its form solidifying for just a moment. Jasper's playing shifted subtly, the melody gaining strength where it intersected with the creature's flickering outline. Studies of sound waves show that certain frequencies disrupt energy patterns. Perhaps music held power here beyond simple comfort. Left, Jasper called as 2 more wraiths peeled from the walls. The traveler pivoted, their blade passing harmlessly through mist until the 3rd verse began. Then steel met unexpected resistance, like cutting through cobweb-thick syrup. The wraith shuddered, its substance briefly torn apart before reforming. Jasper's tempo increased, his boots tapping out a counter-rhythm on the stone floor. Music therapists observe how bodily movement reinforces auditory cues. Each stomp amplified the lute's effect. Light flared where melody and swordplay intersected. The wraiths recoiled, their whispers forming half-heard words. We had forgotten. Warmth. One sighed as it dissipated near a patch of lichen glowing faintly on the wall. Another murmured something about sunlight through leaves before fading completely. Their voices held the ache of centuries, grief preserved like insects in amber. Neuroscientists note how human brains instinctively recognize and respond to vocal patterns. Even these ghostly whispers tugged at something primal in the listeners. The last wraith lingered longest. It reached toward Jasper's lute with transparent fingers, its face almost curious. The bards switched to a gentler tune, one farmers sing to restless livestock during thunderstorms. The creature's glow dimmed to a soft flicker before dissolving into the chamber's shadows. Silence followed, broken only by their own quick breaths. Jasper wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist. Note to self, he panted. Add spectral lullabies to the performance repertoire. His jest carried an undercurrent of awe neither had expected music to hold such power here. Stress research confirms that humor following tension helps the body reset. His quip steadied their hands almost as much as the victory. Beyond the wraith's chamber stood another gate, this one decorated with celestial symbols. The traveler traced a finger along the engraved crescent moon, feeling slight warmth beneath the tarnished brass. It opened onto a spiral stair plunging downward, each step narrower than the last. Jasper went first, his lute now slung across his back. The walls here sweated moisture that reflected their torchlight in zigzag patterns. Deeper still, the stair ended at a heavy door bound in iron straps. No lock showed, but the center bore a palm-sized depression. Jasper nodded to the traveler's sword. Its pommel fit the impression perfectly. Mechanism released with a series of clicks, like a bird's warning call. Ancient engineering often employed sound-based security. Only someone carrying metal would trigger this particular lock. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing Grimald's cellar library. Books lined alcoves cut into the bedrock, their spines pulsing faintly in the torchlight. Jars of preserved creatures crowded work tables, their labels peeling but legible. Phoenix feather, questionable authenticity. Dragon scale fragment, doubtful provenance. Behind the third shelf from the right, just as Edith promised, lay the scroll collection. Their ribbons shone unnaturally bright against the aged parchment. Jasper's fingers hovered over a scroll labeled "Storm in a Jar," but the traveler caught his wrist. Edith's warning echoed nothing but what they came for. They selected the up scroll carefully, noting how it hummed faintly when touched. Research suggests that completing a focused task under stress creates a unique mental clarity. Now, they just needed to retrace their steps before. A distant boom rattled dust from the ceiling. The jars on the shelves clinked together like nervous teeth. Jasper froze, his head cocked toward the sound's origin. That would be Grimald waking, he whispered. Sleep specialists confirm that abrupt noises trigger faster adrenaline response than gradual ones. The suddenness of it sent their pulses racing. They retreated to the stairs, the scroll secured inside Jasper's vest. The wraith chamber stood empty now, its air strangely warmer than before. Perhaps the music had left some lingering change in the stones themselves. Sound waves can rearrange matter at microscopic levels. Had their battle altered this place in ways beyond sight? The willow branches scratched their faces as they emerged into evening air that smelled sweetly of ordinary grass and river mud. Jasper exhaled hard, shaking out his hands like a man just finished with heavy lifting. Behind them, the crypt entrance seemed smaller than before, its shadows less deep. Or perhaps their eyes had simply adjusted to darkness. Perception shifts after prolonged exposure to dimness, research shows. From the direction of Grimald's tower came a sound like a bell being struck underwater. Jasper grabbed the traveler's arm. "Time we weren't here," he muttered, already moving toward the path to Miller's Lane. They'd risked wrathful wizards and restless spirits for this scrap of magic, all to lift one small cat from darkness. Yet as they ran, the scroll safe in its hiding place, another thought surfaced. Had those wraiths been guarding the crypt, or had they been trapped there, waiting centuries for someone to play them a lullaby and set them free? The realization settled between their pounding footsteps. Sometimes heroism wears unexpected guises, a timely song, a steady blade, the willingness to walk into dark places when needed. Cornelius would soon discover what they'd taken, but not yet where they'd gone. The well and waiting whiskers lay just beyond the turn in the path. The scroll pulsed gently against Jasper's chest, its magic ready to work. But overhead, the first stars blinked awake, watching this small drama unfold in Fairhaven's twilight. The levitation spell was within reach, but Cornelius stirred. The tower shuddered as Cornelius woke fully. Glass vials rattled on their shelves. A deep bell tolled somewhere in the walls, its vibrations traveling up through the floorboards. Jasper grabbed the scroll just as the first tendrils of green light began snaking under the cellar door. They went for the window, a narrow slit barely wider than a bread loaf. Jasper shoved his loot through first, wincing as the wood scraped against stone. The traveler followed with the scroll clutched tight. Outside, the drop looked farther than it had from ground level. Research shows adrenaline sharpens time perception. Those seconds stretched like taffy as they hesitated. Jasper went first, twisting midair to land in a crouch on the soft earth below. The traveler hesitated only a heartbeat before following. That's when the scroll's magic activated on its own. Silver letters glowed brighter as the parchment warmed in their grip. The sensation reminded them of holding a sun-warmed stone from a riverbed. Light as thistledown, the traveler gasped as they stepped into empty air. The fall became a slow drift, like a leaf spiraling from an oak branch. Jasper stared up, his mouth slightly open. Studies confirm novel sensory experiences disrupt panic responses. The sheer wonder of floating momentarily overrode their fear. Behind them, the tower's window flared emerald bright. Cornelius' shadow loomed there, his taloned fingers gripping the sill. Jasper recovered first, snatching his loot and breaking into a run. The traveler touched down gently, the scroll's magic fatting just enough to let them jog after Jasper without floating away. Alarms warbled through the trees, not bells now, but something like frogs croaking in perfect rhythm. Vines near the tower's base writhed as if alive. Jasper dodged one that lashed out, his loot bouncing against his back. The traveler kept the scroll pressed flat against their chest, fearing the wind might snatch it. They reached the willow's shelter just as the first searching beam of light cut through the woods. Jasper pressed against the rough bark, breathing hard. His fingers found his lute strings, plucking a quiet tune that didn't match his racing pulse. Music therapists note familiar melodies can override stress responses. His hands moved automatically through scales he'd practiced 1,000 times. The traveler watched the scroll's glow pulse in time with the distant alarms. Silver ink swirled under their fingertips, responding to some unseen current. Edith's words echoed magic had weight, and this scrap of parchment now carried the heft of their escape. Jasper peeked around the trunk. He's not following. The bard sounded almost disappointed, probably setting traps instead. His chuckle lacked its usual ease. They kept to the overgrown paths, avoiding the main road. Night insects chorused around them, undisturbed by the tower's distant clamor. The scroll grew warmer as they moved, its magic reacting to their urgency. Once, the travelers stumbled over a root, and the parchment flared bright enough to cast their shadows ahead of them. Jasper eyed it warily. Hope that doesn't wear off before the well. His fingers tapped an uneven rhythm against his lute case. Stress often manifests in restless movement. His habitual need to fill silences grew more pronounced with each step. The village lights appeared gradually, first as single pinpricks, then as warm glows behind shutters. Someone's laundry still hung on a line, forgotten in the excitement. The scents of supper, roast onions, fresh bread drifted from the briar's open windows. Normalcy persisted just beyond their adrenaline-fueled sprint. Melly still waited by the well, her small figure silhouetted against the deepening blue of evening. She'd piled stones into a precarious tower, knocking them over and rebuilding in an endless loop. Leia paced nearby, her knitting needles clicking like anxious insects. "You got it." Melly scrambled up as they approached, her eyes fixed on the scroll's glow. Jasper made a show of presenting it, his performer's instincts overriding exhaustion. One wizard's levitation charm, freshly borrowed. The scroll crackled as he unrolled it fully, revealing lines of silver that pulsed like slow breaths. Leia reached out but didn't touch. "Will it work on cats?" Her voice wavered between hope and doubt. The traveler studied the instructions. Simple words, no incantations, just intention made manifest. Research suggests belief influences outcomes, even in mundane tasks. How much more so with magic involved? Only one way to know. They moved to the well's edge. Whiskers' plaintive mew floated up, weaker now. The remaining fish scraps lay untouched on the ledge below. Jasper positioned himself where he could play over the well's opening. For ambience, he claimed, though his fingers trembled slightly on the strings. The lute's tone deepened in the stone cylinder, resonating like a giant's heartbeat. The traveler held the scroll over the darkness. Silver light spilled downward, illuminating mossy stones and the tattered remnants of the old bucket rope. 15 feet down, 2 reflective eyes blinked up at them. Light as thistledown, the traveler read. The words left their lips tingling. Jasper's music swelled slightly, underscoring each syllable. Rise like dawn. The scroll's glow intensified, pooling in the traveler's palms before streaming downward in liquid ribbons of light. The effect reminded them of honey pouring from a spoon, slow, golden, inevitable. Whisker's ledge became visible as the light reached it. The cat stood stiff-legged, his fur puffed out in all directions. When the silver radiance touched him, he let out a startled yowl. Then he lifted, not like a bird taking flight, but like a cork rising through water smooth, unhurried. Jasper's playing faltered as they all watched the floating cat ascend. Melly clutched Leia's skirts. The silver glow from the levitation scroll pulsed like a heartbeat as Whiskers rose from the well's darkness. His fur stood on end, but he didn't struggle against the shimmering strands of magic cradling him. The scroll's words still hovered in the air above the well. Light as thistledown, rise like dawn, fading slowly as their work was done. Leia made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob when Whiskers cleared the edge. She scooped him up before his paws touched stone, burying her face in his fur. He smelled of damp moss and old water, but his purr rumbled loud as a beehive against her chest. Research confirms physical contact with pets lowers cortisol levels. Leia's shoulders relaxed visibly as the cat kneaded his claws into her apron. Matthew Thornfield arrived moments later, his boots muddy from rushing across the fields. He didn't speak, just squeezed his wife's shoulder and scratched behind Whisker's ears. His palm left streaks of flour on the cat's back. He must have come straight from the mill. Studies show shared positive experiences release oxytocin, strengthening social bonds. The way Matthew kept nodding at the travelers spoke louder than thanks. The village noticed. Folks paused their evening chores to watch Leia fuss over Whiskers. The baker sent over a meat pie, still warm from the oven. The miller's daughter brought a saucer of cream. Even dour Henrik paused his muttering about bandits to comment that black and white cats brought good harvest luck. Gareth appeared as twilight deepened, his tavern apron streaked with ale spills. He took in the scene, Whiskers purring in Leia's arms, the scroll's last glow fatting, Jasper tuning his lute like nothing extraordinary had happened. Briar's got stew on, was all he said, jerking his thumb toward town. The invitation was clear, celebration awaited. Leia pressed 2 silver coins into the traveler's hand. Then something more precious, a braided circle of string with whiskers, claw nestled at its center. For luck, she murmured, tying it around their wrist. The claw gleamed strangely, perhaps still holding traces of the wizard's magic. Sleep scientists note how tactile anchors, worry stones, textured bracelets can ground anxious minds before bed. The walk back to the briar felt different. Children darted ahead, pretending to cast spells on each other. Neighbors who'd barely nodded at the travelers now fell into step beside them. Even the evening birdsong seemed louder, as if the forest celebrated too. Research confirms communal joy creates lasting psychological benefits. The lightness in the air was as tangible as the pie cooling in its cloth wrapping. Inside the tavern, candles burned brighter than usual. Gareth produced a cask of spiced cider, normally saved for holidays. Jasper claimed a corner stool and began playing a reel that set feet tapping. Whiskers, thoroughly spoiled by now, perched on a barrel accepting admiration like a tiny furry king. Matthew Thornfield raised the first toast, not to grand heroes or mighty deeds, but to those who notice when others need lifting. His gaze lingered on the traveler's wrist where Leia's charm hung. The cider tasted like apples and autumn smoke, warming from the inside out. Psychologists find that simple rituals, shared drinks, traditional songs help mark moments of transition. Jasper's music shifted as the night wore on. The lively reels gentled into lullabies from the region's hills. Someone began singing words older than the village itself, about lost lambs found and loved ones coming home. The traveler recognized the melody Jasper had played in the crypt, but here it held no fear. Neuroscience shows familiar music activates the brain's relaxation pathways. Shoulders untensed around the room as voices joined the refrain. Melly fell asleep first, curled on a bench with her head pillowed on Leia's shawl. The blacksmith's son carefully carried her to the hearth's warmth. Others drifted out in ones and twos, carrying leftovers for tomorrow's lunch or ailing relatives. Each departure prompted more quiet thanks, a handshake, a promise of future favors. Social bonding research emphasizes reciprocity's role in community cohesion. The traveler's place in Fairhaven's web grew more secure with each nod exchanged. Gareth locked up slowly, letting stragglers finish their drinks. His gaze kept returning to the notice board where Marcus' bandit warning still hung. But for now, he simply pocketed the key and wished the traveler good rest. Outside, the village slept beneath a sky strewn with stars. Only the mill's constant turning broke the silence, its wheel turning as reliably as the dawn would come. The loft bed at the Briar felt different tonight, not just a borrowed space, but a place earned. The bracelet turned warm against the traveler's wrist when they blew out the candle. Whiskers' purr still echoed faintly in memory, blending with the creek's murmur beyond the stable walls. Small things, perhaps, a rescued cat, shared cider, handmade thanks. But studies show such moments weave the fabric of belonging more surely than grand gestures ever could. Tomorrow would bring its own tasks. Marcus, plan unfinished chores, the wizard's inevitable displeasure. But tonight, the traveler slept deeply for the first time since arriving. Not because the world had changed, but because they'd changed their small corner of it. And as sleep carried them away, the village's response sets the stage for larger challenges. The morning meeting in the village square had none of the tavern's warmth from the night before. Marcus stood on the old auction block, sharpening his knife against a whetstone in slow, even strokes. Villagers clustered in tense groups, shepherds with crooks still crusted with field mud, farmers in patched coats clutching tally sticks to calculate their losses. Research shows collective problem solving activates the brain's social bonding circuits, easing the weight of individual fear. Hendrik spoke first, slapping a broken fence rail on the cobbles. They took 6 sheep this time, left the gates open so the rest scattered. His hands shook slightly where they gripped the wood. Across the circle, the miller's daughter whispered about missing grain sacks. The tension smelled like sour milk left too long in the sun. Marcus let the grievances settle before speaking. His plan came out in terse phrases between whetstone passes. No grand battle, just a handful of villagers positioned along Pumpkin Grove Road after dark. Jasper would play his lute from the old watchtower, masking their footsteps with a repetitive melody known to lull even restless children. Studies confirm rhythmic auditory stimuli override the brain's threat detection, briefly, long enough for stealthy movement. The traveler stood slightly apart, noting how the group's posture shifted as Marcus talked. Shoulders loosened. Farmers began nodding along, their fingers unconsciously tapping the rhythm Jasper hummed under his breath. Shared purpose knit them tighter than any speech could. Neuroscientists observe that coordinated action raises pain thresholds and stamina. These people would walk farther and fight harder together than alone. Details emerged through overlapping voices. The blacksmith promised quieted hinges for the storage shed they'd target. The midwife mixed a paste to dull torchlight reflections off weapons. Even Melly had a role, her small hands perfect for greasing gate mechanisms so they wouldn't squeak. The traveler listened, recognizing the careful way Marcus included everyone. Social psychology shows that assigning concrete tasks reduces helplessness during crises. When eyes turned their way, the travelers simply nodded. Their reputation from Whisker's rescue earned them a position guarding the road's eastern approach beside Matthew. No fanfare, just Gareth passing them, a cudgel wrapped in rags to muffle strikes. Its heft felt unfamiliar compared to their sword, but right for this work, blunt and practical. The stealth charm Leia had given them swung gently at their belt, its bead tapping a quiet tempo against their thigh. Jasper practiced his melody as plans finalized. The tune wavered at first, then steadied into something that prickled the back of the neck, minor keys resolving into suspensions, like a story pausing before the ending. Music therapists use similar patterns to gently shift listeners from alertness toward calmer states. Around the square, villagers unconsciously matched their breathing to its phrases. Marcus divided the group with hand signals more suited to mercenaries than farmers. One team for the bandits' horses, another for the stolen goods, a third to block escape routes. His confidence seeped into the others, straightening spines that had begun to hunch under months of losses. Research confirms that observing competence in leaders lowers followers. Cortisol levels, Marcus's scars, and steady hands spoke louder than any boast. The traveler watched the villagers disperse to prepare, their steps quicker now. Hendrik paused to grip Marcus's forearm, not quite thanks, but close. The miller's wife pressed a bundled lunch into Jasper's hands despite his protests. Small acts, but they wove a net of mutual care strong enough to hold their fragile courage. Psychologists find that reciprocity rituals fortify groups before challenges. Dusk found them in position. Crickets sang in the barley stubble as the traveler crouched beside Matthew behind a fallen oak. The road stretched empty before them, its ruts silvered by the rising moon. Somewhere to the west, Jasper's lute began a thread of sound at first, then a tapestry of repeating themes designed to sink into the subconscious. The melody wrapped around the occasional owl call, blending so seamlessly that even the traveler's alertness softened at the edges. Matthew passed a waterskin smelling of honey and thyme. "For nerves," he whispered. The sip burned pleasantly, warmth spreading down to fingertips gripping the cudgel. Bandits would expect drunk or desperate farmers, not men with herbs sharpening their senses. Ethnobotanists document hundreds of such preparations, folk remedies that walk the line between medicine and ritual. A twig snapped on the road. The traveler's pulse jumped, but Jasper's tempo stayed steady. Shadows resolved into shapes, two men leading overburdened mules, their whispers lost under the lute's tide. Matthew touched the traveler's wrist, counting down with calloused fingers. 3, 2, 1. They rose together. The bandits barely had time to drop the reins before the cudgel found its mark. No battle cries, just efficient motion as planned. Nearby, a startled horse flung its head up, but Jasper's melody shifted seamlessly to soothe it. The entire operation lasted minutes, goods recovered, bandits bound with their own belts, livestock calmed and secured. Social scientists note how rehearsed actions unfold with minimal conscious thought during stress, leaving memory in blurry fragments. By midnight, the square filled with relieved laughter. Children who should have been asleep darted between adults to peek at the tied prisoners. The miller's wife distributed cider, while Hendrik clapped Marcus on the back hard enough to stagger him. Even Gareth cracked a smile as he collected the returned ale casks. The traveler leaned against the auction block, finally feeling the ache in their arms from gripping the cudgel too tightly. Leia appeared with whiskers cradled like a baby. "Saw the whole thing from the hayloft," she admitted, scratching beneath the cat's chin. He purred loud enough to draw smiles, stretching one paw toward the traveler's dangling stealth charm. Studies show petting animals lowers blood pressure after stressful events. The villagers naturally gravitated toward him, stroking his fur as they recounted their parts in hushed, proud voices. Marcus accepted a cider, but didn't drink. His eyes kept scanning the road beyond the torches. Years of fighting showed in the way he noted exits even now, the knife still loose in its sheath. Yet, when he caught the traveler's gaze, he nodded once and earned acknowledgement. Psychologists find that nonverbal recognition often carries more weight than praise among men raised on actions over words. The scattered conversations gradually knit into planning. Who would stand watch over the prisoners until the magistrate came? How to divide the recovered goods fairly? When to repair the fence gaps? The traveler listened, sipping cider gone warm in its cup. This wasn't the heroism from stories, no banners or ballads, just people protecting what sustained them. Neuroscience reveals that communal problem solving activates the brain's reward centers as strongly as personal triumphs. Jasper's loot case lay open at his feet, a few copper coins glittering against the velvet. Sally Farwether lingered nearby, pretending to examine the bandit's stolen brooch with undue interest. The traveler watched him play a new tune just for her, something sweet and uncomplicated, notes rising like bread dough in a warm kitchen. Simple pleasures after shared struggle. Gareth began extinguishing the torches one by one. The prisoners groaned as they were hauled toward the smokehouse for temporary holding. Children were scolded toward bed, though their excited whispers would last hours yet. And all through the dispersing crowd, hands kept reaching out to clasp shoulders, pass tools, or simply touch someone else's sleeve in reassurance. The resolution of the bandit threat brings unexpected rewards. The Farwether coach arrived at the Briar just as the first evening stars appeared. Its dark green lacquer shone even through road dust, the family crest picked out in gold leaf that caught the tavern's torchlight. Lord Farwether stepped down first, his boots crunching gravel with deliberate precision. His wife followed, gloved fingers brushing the doorframe, as though checking for dust no one else could see. Sally froze where she stood with a tray of empty mugs. A year's worth of village gossip had painted her parents as unbending, the sort who'd planned her marriage to a baron's nephew before she could walk. Now they stood in a room that smelled of hops and wet wool, their expressions unreadable. Jasper's lute slipped from his lap, saved only by its strap catching his elbow. Lord Farwether cleared his throat. "We understand you helped defend the village." His gaze swept past Marcus's knife, Hendrik's scythe leaning by the hearth, and settled on Jasper. Our gamekeeper mentioned unusual music in the woods that night. A log shifted in the fireplace, sending sparks up the chimney. Sally set down her tray, the mugs rattling slightly. Psychologists note how social scripts break under unexpected vulnerability. No one had prepared for nobility, admitting they'd been wrong. Lady Farwither unpinned her cloak, draping it over a stool Gareth rushed to provide. "We've arranged a position," she said, "if you care to prove yourself." Her fingers traced the stool's uneven leg, where a patron had kicked it too often. Research shows that small conciliatory gestures, touching common objects, accepting offered seats, signal social flexibility. The proposition emerged piecemeal between sips of Gareth's best cider. Jasper could audition for the estate's court bard role, traditionally held by much older musicians. A cottage came with it, its thatch recently repaired. 3 silver pieces per month, plus leftovers from the kitchens. Conditional, of course, on maintaining decorum and composing at least one suitable song per season. Jasper's knee bounced under the table, vibrating the empty mug before him. His earlier swagger had dissolved into something hesitant, not quite fear, but the dawning understanding that dreams sometimes come true in ordinary packages. Neuroscientists find that achieving long-held goals often brings unexpected ambivalence. The moment stands smaller than imagined, yet heavier somehow. Lord Farwither produced a folded paper from his coat. "The cottage lease," he said, sliding it across the table's scored surface. 12 months trial period. Sally exhaled audibly from the serving counter. Her father's shoulders tensed before adding, visiting hours would be negotiable. No one mentioned the Baron's nephew. The travelers who'd passed through last winter had brought tales of his arrogance, his careless spending. Jasper's fingers hovered above the lease, then withdrew to strum a quiet chord. Gareth polished the same tankard twice in succession. Social psychologists confirm that unspoken group acknowledgement sometimes carries more weight than grand declarations. Sally broke first, abandoning all pretense of work to perch on the bench beside Jasper. Her parents didn't protest, though Lady Farwither adjusted her ring in what might have been discomfort or simply habit. The village watched this dance of concessions and small bravery, nobility bending, youth stepping toward responsibility, parents learning their child's happiness weighed more than ancient plans. Jasper signed with his stage name, Jasper of the Windy Oaks, flourishing the pen like he'd seen traveling scribes do. Then immediately smudged it with his thumb, turning the fancy signature into an ordinary ink blot. The Farwithers pretended not to notice. Studies show success often follows those who adapt to unexpected imperfections rather than resist them. Details emerged as the cider pitcher emptied. Jasper's cottage stood near the estate's western apple orchard, close enough to hear the river, but not so close to flood. The court bard before him had left a writing desk under the east window, where morning light fell clearest. There would be expectations, no more disappearing for weeks to follow caravan routes, no ballads about the butler's fondness for cherry wine. Marcus broke the growing solemnity by demanding Jasper play something for his new employers. The lute's straps settled into familiar grooves on Jasper's shoulders as he considered. He chose The Miller's Dawn, a song about ordinary morning routines, chickens fed, bread kneaded, the mill wheel's first creaking turns. No one mentioned how perfectly this matched the life now offered. No grand adventures, no lavish palaces, just steady work and a roof that didn't leak. Sally's foot tapped the rhythm under the table, her shoulder pressing lightly against Jasper's arm. The Farwithers left as shadows lengthened across the tavern floor. Their coachman flicked the reins, while Sally's mother adjusted her bonnet strings through the open window. No sweeping pronouncements of approval, just a quiet request to attend next month's harvest festival with a new song prepared. Small steps, like Edith had always advised. Not conquering kingdoms or winning tourneys, but proving up to daily tasks, keeping a tune, fixing a latch, remembering to bank the cottage fire at night. Psychologists confirm that committing to modest responsibilities before taking on larger ones builds durable self-worth. Gareth served a final round on the house. Hendrik reclaimed his usual stool at the bar. The tavern cat, a scarred veteran named Barley, jumped into Jasper's abandoned seat and began licking one paw with exaggerated nonchalance. Life resumed its rhythms, though subtly altered, like a stream finding a new stone in its bed. Jasper ran his thumb along the lute's edge where the wood had worn smooth. The lease lay folded in his breast pocket, its ink likely staining the fabric already. Sally wiped tables nearby, humming along to whatever tune played in her head. No ballads would be written about tonight, no daring quests or impossible odds overcome, just a family accepting they'd misjudged, a village watching one of its own step carefully toward happiness. Outside, Whiskers chased moths in the tavern yard, his bell collar jingling. The Farwither coach's lanterns dwindled to specks along the north road. Inside, Jasper plucked absently at strings, testing how the Miller's Dawn might sound with a bridge about apple blossoms. The traveler sipped their cider, content to witness rather than interfere. Back at Thornfield Cottage, Leia would be tidying her yarn basket, Matthew checking the chicken coop latch. Over at the mill, the evening shift worker leaned against the great wheel's spokes, watching fireflies dance above the water. Fair Haven's nights always ended like this, ordinary, uneventful, threaded through with quiet anticipation for whatever the next dawn might bring. Just small lives unfolding as they do, neither perfect nor tragic, sustained by simple acts of care and the occasional unlikely second chance. The story's gentle tempo leads toward a quiet, reflective close. The hearth fire crackled low in Edith Moon Whisper's cottage as she stirred the pot of rosemary-infused honey. She smiled to herself when the travel-worn boots scraped against her stoop. She'd known the footsteps even before the knock. Her grandchild entered with less hesitation than last time, pausing only to untie mud-caked laces before stepping inside. "You've grown into your shoulders," she observed without turning from the fire. Her voice carried the same quiet certainty as when she'd predicted rain 3 days before the clouds came. Studies confirm that positive recognition from elders activates reward pathways in the brain. The traveler stood a little straighter, their hands unclenching at their sides. The cottage smelled of drying thyme and the faint, lingering scent of Edith's morning pipe. She motioned toward the wooden chest where extra quilts were stored. Fetch the green one for the table. Let's have proper supper tonight. Simple words, but they carried weight. Chest access meant temporary residency. The invitation to help with domestic tasks signaled belonging now, not just visiting. Edith watched from the corner of her eye as they laid out the quilt with careful corners, no longer dumping their pack in the doorway like last visit. No restless fidgeting while she cooked. Research shows that routine participation in household rhythms creates neural stability. Through small acts like this, her grandchild was rewiring decades of rootlessness. Hand me the blue bowl, she directed. The traveler reached for it without scanning the shelves first. They remembered its place now. Edith hummed approval as she ladled stew thickened with barley and late harvest carrots. Meals here always included something from her garden, however small. The ritual said, "I've planned for you more plainly than sentiment could." They ate in comfortable silence, punctuated by the fire's pops. The traveler's hands, once quick and nervous, moved with new steadiness passing bread. Edith noted calluses forming along the knuckles, honest work marks, not sword blisters. Developmental psychologists emphasize how acquired skills reshape identity. These hands now knew fence mending and herb bundling, as well as blade grips. I heard about the well cat, Edith said between bites. The traveler's spoon paused midair. Of course she knew news traveled through Fair Haven like groundwater, emerging where least expected. And the Farweather boys' new post. She didn't ask for details, just laid the facts between them like extra helpings. The traveler looked at their reflection in the darkened window, same face as months ago, yet somehow fuller. Not from better meals alone, but from the village's gradual imprint. Social integration research confirms that meaningful contribution reshapes self-perception, seeing oneself reflected in others. Gratitude builds internal scaffolding. Edith cleared the bowls herself, a rare concession. When she returned, she held a letter thick with new pages. Your father wrote again. The traveler's fingertips grazed the seal, but didn't break it, an improvement over last time's frantic tearing. Edith appreciated the restraint. He'll want tales of your grand adventures, she mused, stirring honey into mint tea. What will you tell him? The firelight caught the traveler's face as they considered. Not bandit skirmishes or wizard towers, though those stories waited ready. Instead, they spoke of the miller teaching them to read, whether in cloud formations, of Leia showing how to mend knitted gaps, of the blacksmith's apprentice sharing tricks for cooling forge burns. Mundane treasures, all. Edith nodded, her braid sliding over one shoulder. Good bones make solid houses, she said, an old phrase meaning beginnings mattered more than flourishes. Scientists find that recounting positive micromoments before bed enhances sleep quality. Perhaps her grandchild already sensed this. She retrieved her pipe from the mantel, packing it with her special evening blend lavender, a pinch of chamomile, something woodsy beneath. Stay the week, she said between puffs. The south field needs turning before frost. Not an order, not a request, simply nomming what was. Psychological safety research shows clarity often comforts more than vague reassurances. The traveler exhaled through their nose, studying their hands again. There's more bandit talk, they admitted. Marcus thinks they'll. Tomorrow's troubles keep best with tomorrow's sun. Edith tapped her pipe against the hearthstone. Tonight, there's turning soil and airing blankets. She gestured to the stack of folded linens waiting by the ladder to the loft. Sleep specialists emphasize pre-bed routines that engage the body. These tactile tasks would quiet any racing thoughts. Later, when the traveler climbed to the loft, they found their old bed remade with fresh straw and the quilt they'd helped sew last visit. Edith had left a candle burning low in its dish, not enough to read by, just sufficient light to undress without stubbed toes. Small kindnesses communicated care where grand gestures might overwhelm. From below came the scrape of Edith's chair as she settled with her mending. The rhythm of her needle through fabric carried upwards, steady, unhurried. Research confirms that peripheral sounds of domestic activity can lower nighttime anxiety, proof of others awake and keeping watch. The traveler lay listening to those familiar sounds, the fire's whispers, the occasional clink of Edith's thimble against her teacup, the wind testing the shutters. They traced the edge of their father's unopened letter where it lay on the bedside stool. No urgency to respond tonight. Somewhere beyond the cottage, the village slept wrapped in its own rhythms, the baker already dreaming of pre-dawn dough. The mill wheel stilled until morning. Whiskers curled on the briar, warmest hearthstone. Edith's voice floated up eventually, softer than the candlelight. There's always something that needs doing. Not a reminder of obligations waiting, but an offering, the peace found in belonging to a place's endless, ordinary cycles. Psychologists note how having clear purpose aids relaxation. Her words framed tomorrow's tasks as privileges rather than burdens. The traveler turned onto their side, watching moonlight silver the edges of the quilt's embroidered stars. That first night in Fair Haven felt lifetimes ago. The uncertainty, the prickling sense of being an observer rather than participant. Now, when Gareth nodded them toward chopping duty without asking, or Henrik complained about their axe technique, it signaled inclusion more than any feast invitation could. Somewhere an owl called. The loft's familiar smells, dried hops, cedar chests, Edith's pipe smoke lingering in the rafters, wrapped around them like the quilt's weight. Downstairs, the mending sounds ceased as Edith banked the fire for the night. Her footsteps crossed the floorboards, paused near the ladder, then retreated toward her own bed. The letter could wait until morning. The bandit threats would keep. For now, there was just this, the settling of a house around its occupants, the creak of bed ropes as the traveler surrendered to the pull of well-earned rest. Their last conscious thought wasn't of adventures past or challenges ahead, but of Edith's hands turning soil tomorrow and their own beside them, learning still. Outside, the wind stirred the herb garden, sage brushing against thyme, rosemary nodding to lavender. Each plant knew its place, just as the cottage knew the habits of those it sheltered, just as the village now knew this once stranger's face and capabilities. No fanfare marked the change, only the quiet certainty of footsteps that no longer hesitated at doorways, hands that reached instinctively for where tools belonged. The candle guttered gently in its dish, wax pooling around the wick. Moonlight crept across the floorboards, marking the passage toward dawn in silver increments. Somewhere in the distance, the river murmured over stones as it had for centuries, patient, persistent, shaping the land through small acts repeated daily. The loft's breathing deepened, matching rhythms with the sleeping house below. Tomorrow would come, and with it, the countless ordinary miracles of being needed in a place that remembered. The final mood is one of soothing, dream-filled horizons. Fairhaven Crossing rests now under evening skies, its stories settling like hearth embers. You've walked these lanes where small deeds grow large in quiet ways, a cat rescued, a bard welcomed, silent understandings between neighbors. Edith's wisdom lingers like chamomile steam. Usefulness wears ordinary faces. Let your breathing match the rhythm of laundry swaying on lines. Picture garden plots bordered by smooth stones, their keepers kneeling in good work. These images signal safety to your nervous system. Wherever tomorrow's roads lead, tonight there are only soft shadows and the deep comfort of being part of something. Close your eyes. The village keeps watch. Rest comes